A life shattered. My journey from loving wife to betraying cheater. If someone had told me years ago that I would end up being the kind of wife who cheats on her husband, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, I believed in the sanctity of marriage, in loyalty and devotion. Richard and I had built a life that many envied. I had everything: love, security, and a man who adored me. But something deep inside me began to shift, and before I realized what was happening, I was walking down a path I never thought I'd take. This is my story. A story of love turned to deceit, and a lie so big that it destroyed the one thing I never meant to break. The fairy tale beginning. Richard and I met when we were both fresh out of college, navigating the real world for the first time. He was calm, thoughtful, and steady, everything I needed in my life. We fell hard and fast for each other. Our relationship felt natural, like we were meant to be. After 2 years of dating, Richard proposed during a vacation in Italy, and of course, I said yes. It felt like a dream come true. We had the kind of wedding people dream about: outdoor, under a sprawling oak tree, surrounded by family and friends. The love between us felt almost too perfect. I remember standing there in my white dress, looking at Richard as he promised to love and cherish me forever. I believed him. I believed us. For years, our marriage was blissful. We moved into a comfortable home in the suburbs, built our careers, and enjoyed a routine that made me feel secure. Richard was the kind of husband who supported my every endeavor. He encouraged me to pursue my passions, and we talked about starting a family one day. In those early days, I was sure that nothing could ever tear us apart. The restlessness creeps in. But as the years went by, a strange restlessness crept into my heart. It wasn't that Richard changed. He was still the same reliable, loving man I had married. The problem was me. I felt trapped in the routine we had created. Every day started to feel the same. I began to question whether this was all my life would ever be. Wake up, work, come home, eat dinner, go to bed, repeat. I knew I shouldn't feel this way. I had a good life, a good husband. But the more I tried to shake off the feeling of dissatisfaction, the stronger it became. I began to crave something more, something exciting, something new. I never imagined that this craving would lead me down a path of deception. Meeting Nathan, a dangerous spark. Nathan was the new project manager at the company where I worked. He was different from anyone I had ever known. Confident, charismatic, and just a little bit arrogant. Where Richard was quiet and thoughtful, Nathan was bold and unpredictable. We started working together on a large project, which meant long hours and late nights at the office. At first, our relationship was purely professional, but there was a spark between us, one I hadn't felt in years. It was subtle at first, just lingering glances, jokes that felt more personal than professional, an unspoken connection that simmered beneath the surface. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just imagining things. But as the weeks went on, the attraction between us became impossible to ignore. I found myself looking forward to our time together at work, dressing up just a little bit more on the days I knew I'd see him. It was thrilling, and in that thrill, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: alive. The first lie. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Nathan and I stayed behind to finish up a project. The office was quiet, and we were alone. We talked as we always did, but that night the conversation felt different, deeper, more personal. He told me about his failed marriage, about the loneliness he felt, and I listened. I shared my own fears, my doubts about my marriage, though I stopped short of admitting how lost I felt. When the project was done, he offered to walk me to my car. It was a simple gesture, but as we stood next to my car in the dimly lit parking lot, something shifted. He looked at me in a way no one had in years, with intensity, with desire. I should have walked away, but instead I stood there, frozen. He kissed me. It was soft at first, hesitant, as if testing the waters. I should have pulled away, should have told him it was wrong, but instead, I kissed him back. That moment, one brief, stolen kiss, was the first lie I told to Richard, the first crack in the foundation of our marriage. The affair begins. After that night, everything changed. Nathan and I began finding excuses to be alone together. It started with lunches, then drinks after work, then stolen weekends when I told Richard I was on business trips. I was careful, so careful to cover my tracks. I deleted texts, made sure my phone was never in sight when I was around Richard. Each lie came easier than the last, and before long, I had constructed an entire second life, one where I wasn't just Richard's wife, but Nathan's lover. It felt exciting, dangerous, and for a while, I convinced myself that no one was getting hurt. I still loved Richard, or at least that's what I told myself. I thought I could have both, the stability of my marriage and the thrill of my affair. But it didn't take long for the guilt to set in. The guilt I thought I could handle it. I thought I could balance two lives without either of them crashing down around me. But the weight of the deception started to press down on me. Every time I looked at Richard, every time he smiled at me or held my hand, I felt like I was betraying him all over again. The guilt became a constant companion, a dark cloud that hung over me every moment of every day. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't enjoy the life I had built because I knew I was living a lie. Richard had no idea. He trusted me completely, and that trust was like a knife to my heart. I didn't deserve his love, his devotion, but I couldn't bring myself to end the affair either. The beginning of the end. It all came to a head one night when Richard confronted me. I had been distant for weeks, and he had noticed. He asked me if there was someone else, his voice calm, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I wanted to lie, wanted to deny everything, but I couldn't. The guilt was too much, I confessed. I told him about Nathan, about the affair, about all the lies I had told. I expected him to scream, to yell, to throw me out. But Richard just stood there, silent, his face a mask of shock and hurt. He didn't say a word as I poured out everything, every secret, every betrayal. When I was done, he simply walked away, leaving me standing there in the middle of our living room, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I had destroyed the one thing I never thought I would, our marriage. The fallout. Richard moved out the next day. He packed a bag and left without a word, leaving me alone in our once happy home. The silence was unbearable, the emptiness of the house a constant reminder of what I had lost. Nathan reached out, but I ignored him. The affair had been a fantasy, a way to escape the monotony of my life. But now that it was over, I realized how much I had thrown away for something so meaningless. The divorce was finalized within months. Richard didn't fight it. He simply signed the papers and moved on with his life. I tried to reach out to him, tried to apologize, but he never responded. I couldn't blame him. I had broken his trust, destroyed his faith in me, and there was no going back. Reflection. It's been 2 years since Richard left, and I still think about him every day. I think about the life we had, the love we shared, and how I destroyed it with my selfishness. The affair wasn't worth it. Nathan wasn't worth it. I lost everything, my husband, my home, my sense of self. Now, I live alone in a small apartment, far away from the life I once had. I've tried to move on, but the guilt still lingers, a constant reminder of my betrayal. I've learned that once trust is broken, it can never truly be repaired. And no matter how much time passes, some mistakes stay with you forever. What happens when a once loving wife succumbs to temptation and destroys the life she built with her devoted husband? In this deeply emotional and heart-wrenching tale, one woman's journey from happiness to deception unfolds. Driven by restlessness, she embarks on an affair that unravels her marriage, leaving her to face the devastating consequences of her betrayal. As she reflects on the choices that led her down this dark path, she realizes that some mistakes can never be undone. This is a powerful story of love, lies, and loss, where trust, once broken, can never be restored.